What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be doing a quick FPS test of my Mp7 with a couple of different low power nozzles, so let's check it out. So for the testing conditions, the ambient is right around 80 degrees, 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. There it is in Celsius. And the green gas we'll be using is aim top green gas for the fuel. And I'll be using 2 weights of BBs, 0.20s and 0.32 gram biodegradable BLS BBs. So looking at these results, you can see it's shooting a little bit hot as this is adjusted for 345 FPS at 70 degrees ambient. With the 80 degree ambient and the 2.0s, we are getting a little bit higher. And you can see in the two tests, we're getting about a 15 FPS spread from the lows and the highs on both the 3.2s and the 2.0s. Next up is the Revanchist red low medium power valve with the stock Mp7 valve spring. On the 2.0s, we're getting about 330 to 350 FPS at 80 degrees. You can see the spread is still pretty substantial from the highs and the lows, and we're looking at about a 20 FPS spread in the worst case. Despite this being a one-piece nozzle and not having the NPAS in there, the consistency still isn't really there. Next up, we've got the Revanchist gold low power valve with the stock Mp7 spring. We're getting as low as 270 FPS and up to 300 FPS, again, at an 80 degree ambient. Still, we're seeing a lot of that spread of 20 FPS from the highs and the lows. So last up is the Bowmaster's red low power valve, and frankly speaking, this valve is not much better than the stock one. You're going to get right around the same FPS at 400 to 420 FPS. And again, the consistency is all over the place, despite it having that rubber O-ring to help it seal. It does get a little bit better with the 3.2s, but for most fields, this is going to be shooting way too hot for an SMG. So looking at the mechanical differences between the different setups, we can see that the stock Mp7 spring is very long, so it's going to let a little bit more air through before it closes down the valve. If you want a lower power spring or shorten the existing spring, you can fine tune the FPS a little bit. I did cut one of the stock springs, but I only saw about a 5 FPS drop at most. So just keep that in mind. As you can see, the inner diameter of the valve is really what is going to dictate how much gas is going to be let through and propel the BB forward. And we can see that the Bowmaster valve really isn't that much smaller compared to stock. So that kind of tells us, hey, it's not going to really reduce the FPS as much as we'd like. But if you're looking at the Revanchist valves, they're much narrower in diameter, and so that's why it's able to reduce the FPS so much. Overall, my recommendation is just stick with the stock NPAS if you have it in there already. It does a great job. It does get a little weird around 300 FPS, some failure to cycle issues, some failure to lock back, and kind of overall sluggishness. So I do recommend that you go with the Revanchist gold low power nozzle if that's the FPS you're targeting. But otherwise, the NPAS is great. If your gun didn't come with an NPAS, CL makes a great NPAS. It looks like the same one that's kind of in my gun. So that's what I use to get about 300 FPS for my Mp7. So I hope this video was useful for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions about the valves, and yeah, looking forward to putting together a review for this Mp7 and really, talking about my experience with this thing and letting you guys know if it's any good. Until next time, see you out there in the field.